Every year, December 29th looks like just another quiet winter day on the calendar. A pause between the revelry of Christmas and the reckoning of the new year. A day for returns, for quiet, for catching your breath. Until you realize how many legends took their last breath on this date. It is a silent graveyard in history. A king, a saint, a poet, a prophet of the image, a rebel queen. Different eras, different worlds, different battles. But somehow, all connected by this one, brutal, common terminus. This is not just about how they died. This is about what they built in the shadow of their ending, what they suffered, what they loved, what they refused to surrender. It is about the astonishing, terrifying alchemy that sometimes turns a death into a beginning and a final day into an everlasting mark. So sit down, stay with me to the end, and let's travel through time, from a bloody cathedral floor in the 12th century to a hospital room where the world's greatest footballer whispered his final goodbye, from the silent Alps to the electric streets of punk London. This is the story of the ghosts of December 29th, and it begins not with a birth, but with a murder that created a saint. To Thomas Becket, The Martyr's Calculus, 1170. A bleak, gray afternoon. 4 knights on horseback, Reginald Fitzurse, William de Tracy, Hugh de Morville, Richard le Breton, dismount with grim purpose. Their breath fogs in the cold air. They are not monsters in a fairy tale. They are hardened men, believing themselves to be executing the king's implied, if not spoken, will. The cathedral is cold, vast, and shadowed. Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, is near the altar. He has just finished Vespers. The monks sense the intrusion, a ripple of fear moving through them like a cold wind. The friendship between King Henry II and Thomas Becket was once the stuff of legend. The king and his chancellor, inseparable. They hunted, feasted, and governed together. Henry, a volcanic force of will, wanted to bend the church to the crown's law. He needed a loyal man in the highest church office, so he appointed his friend Thomas as Archbishop of Canterbury. It was, he thought, a masterstroke. But the moment Thomas Becket put on the archbishop's robes, a transformation occurred. The worldly courtier, the lover of fine wine and fine company, was consumed by a new, ferocious identity, defender of the church. It was as if the office itself possessed him. Flashback. Sunnier days. Henry and Thomas laughing, clapping each other on the back. Then a later scene. A furious, red-faced Henry pacing his chamber, Becket standing resolute, immovable. The fracture is physical, visceral. The no's began. No to royal judges trying clergy. No to the crown taxing church lands. No to the king's interference. Each no was a hammer blow to their friendship. Becket wasn't just defending privileges. He was drawing a line in the soul of England. Where did the king's power end and God's begin? The knights stride up the nave, their mail and swords clinking. They call out, "Where is Thomas Becket, traitor to the king and realm?" Becket turns. He does not run. He walks toward them, to the transept. His face is pale but set. He says, "Here I am, no traitor, but archbishop and priest of God." And then came the king's infamous cry of frustration, likely spoken in a rage, never meant as literal orders. "What miserable drones and traitors have I nourished and promoted in my household, who let their lord be treated with such shameful contempt by a low-born clerk? Will no one rid me of this troublesome priest?" 4 knights heard not a king's anguish, but a king's command. They saw a path to glory, or at least to favor. The argument escalates. The knights try to drag him out. Becket resists, clinging to a pillar. He shouts, "Touch me not, Reginald. You owe me fealty and obedience." The tension is a wire about to snap, then a shove, a knight's mailed fist. Becket stumbles. He regains his composure, folds his hands, and bows his head. His final words are whispered, not to them, but to the void. "I am ready to die for my Lord. For the name of Jesus and for the protection of the church, I embrace death." The first sword blow from Reginald Fitzurse shears off the crown of his skull. A second blow from Hugh de Morville is halted by a brave monk, his arm nearly severed. But then Richard le Breton strikes with full force, scattering the archbishop's brains upon the stone floor. William de Tracy stands guard. The deed is done in seconds. Silence, but for the dripping. The knights stare, suddenly realizing the monstrous sacrilege they have committed in a holy place. They flee into the gathering dusk. The murder, meant to silence, created a megaphone. The blood on the cold stones became a seed. Pilgrims began to arrive within days. Miracles were reported at his tomb. The Church, sensing the power of this martyrdom, canonized him with breathtaking. King Henry II, the most powerful man in England, was forced to walk barefoot to Canterbury in sackcloth to be scourged by monks before Becket's shrine. The crown did penance before the cross. For centuries, December 29th was the feast of St. Thomas Becket, a day to remember that killing a man of principle doesn't end his argument, it eternalizes it. On that winter day in 1170, Becket performed his final, greatest act. He turned his death into a symbol that outlasted kingdoms. The first ghost of December 29th was a political one, a lesson in the limits of power, written in blood. Inti Sanatorium Room, Valmont Day, December 29th, 1926. The room is spare, clean, filled with the thin, clear light of a Swiss winter. Rainer Maria Rilke, 51, is propped on pillows. He is gaunt, his skin almost translucent. His hands, once capable of crafting the most delicate verses, now lie still on the coverlet, bruised and fragile. He is looking not at the room, but through it. If Becket's battle was with the world, our next ghost fought his battles in the infinite landscape within. Rainer Maria Rilke. A name not for stadiums, but for silent rooms and solitary walks. He gave voice to the voiceless moments, the ache of loneliness, the terror of God's approach, the sublime shock of beauty. A younger Rilke, walking the streets, visiting the Louvre, staring at the statue of an archaic torso of Apollo. We hear his lines from Archaic Torso of Apollo, "You must change your life." We see him in the company of Auguste Rodin, learning from the sculptor not just about art, but about work, the relentless daily labor of attention. His life was a pilgrimage of displacement. Prague, Paris, Duino, Mouzot, Valmont. He was a perpetual guest, even in his own life. He believed intimacy required distance, that to truly see another, you had to preserve an uncrossable inner space. This made him a frustrating friend, a distracted lover, but a peerless poet of the inner sanctum. Rilke's illness was leukemia, then called leukosis. A poet whose medium was the unseen, emotion, memory, spirit, was betrayed by his own unseen blood. The capillaries weakened. A simple gesture, opening a letter, could cause his skin to tear and bleed. His physician, Dr. Hemmerly, is present, checking his pulse with a profound look of sadness. He called his illness the brute. Yet in its grip, he displayed a terrifying clarity. He had spent a lifetime conversing with angels and monsters in his Duino elegies. Death was not an alien intruder, but the final, great converse. He wrote to a friend, "I am not one of those who neglect the body in order to make of it a sacrificial offering for the soul, since my soul would thoroughly dislike being served in such a fashion." Rilke's eyes shift to the window. A rose, the flower he loved and wrote about so often, sits in a vase on the sill, frost at the edges of its petals. He whispers something. A nurse leans in. It is not words, but a sigh. He slips away as quietly as a page turning. There is no struggle. The room holds its breath. The great chronicler of the inner tremor meets the ultimate silence. The world did not stop on December 29th, 1926. But in that quiet room, a source of light for the modern soul was extinguished. His legacy, however, was just beginning. Soldiers in trenches would find his letters to a young poet in their packs decades later. Therapists would prescribe his lines to those lost in grief. He became the secret companion for anyone who ever felt the world was too much, yet beautiful beyond bearing. His December 29th was not a martyrdom, but a merging. The poet who wrote, "Death is the side of life averted from us," finally turned to face it. His ghost is the quietest of all, a whisper in the mind, a sudden, unexplained feeling of depth on an ordinary day. Andrei Tarkovsky, The Sculptor of Time, 1986, in Hospital Room, Paris, day, December 29th, 1986. The light is diffused, clinical. Andrei Tarkovsky, 54, is a silhouette against the window. Tubes and wires connect him to the machinery of postponement. He is watching a small television screen. On it, the final transcendent sequence from his own film, The Sacrifice, plays silently. Our next ghost lived between worlds, between the material and the spiritual, between the Soviet Union he loved and hated and the West that freed and exiled him. Andrei Tarkovsky did not make movies to tell stories. He made them to ask a single unanswerable question. What is a human being in the face of time, memory, and God? Flashback. USSR, 1960s-70s, Tarkovsky on the set of Andrei Rublev, enduring freezing mud, demanding historical authenticity from a state that wanted myth. Arguments with Guskino officials who found Solaris not about space communism and Stalker defeatist and mystical. We see the famous, agonizingly slow tracking shots of the zone in Stalker, a physical manifestation of a soul's journey. He called his art sculpting in time. While other directors cut and spliced, he held shots for minutes. A candle burning, water dripping from a ceiling, wind in a field of grass. He forced the audience to live in those moments, to feel the weight of seconds, the poetry of decay, the agony of waiting. For him, cinema was not escape, it was confrontation. Back to scene, hospital room. Tarkovsky coughs a deep, wet rattle. His wife, Larissa, wipes his brow. His son, Andryosha, holds his hand. The rumor that his cancer was caused by filming in the toxic, chemical waste-laden locations of Stalker hangs in the air like a tragic irony. The artist who sought spiritual purity was poisoned by the physical corruption of his world. Exile was his final great sacrifice. To make his last films, Nostalgia and The Sacrifice, he had to leave the USSR, knowing he might never see his homeland or his son again. The very themes of his work, rootedness, memory, the pain of separation, became the fabric of his life. His films became prayers from a distance. On the TV screen, the boy waters the dead tree and speaks to God. Tarkovsky's eyes, clouded with pain, fix on the image. He had poured every remaining ounce of his belief into that final frame, a desperate, hopeful act of faith in a barren world. His breathing shallows. The images from his life's work seem to flash in the room: horses in the rain, a floating woman in zero gravity, a house shaking from an unseen train, a man setting his own life ablaze. The sculptor's time is running out. He died on December 29, 1986, far from the birch forests of Russia, in a Parisian suburb. His funeral at the Russian Orthodox cemetery was a small affair of exiles and artists. But his ghost did not rest. It seeped into the DNA of cinema. Every director who dares to slow down, to linger, to demand contemplation, walks in the path he carved. He proved that film could be a medium not for the eye, but for the soul. His December 29th was the final cut, the last long take fading to black. EXT. Hospital Albert Einstein, São Paulo Day, December 29, 2022. A vigil, a sea of yellow and green, candles, jerseys, flowers, flags, silent tears, spontaneous song. The world's media encamps behind barriers. The mood is not of shock, but of profound collective mourning. The end of a long, graceful decline. The room is not a sterile cell. It is filled with family photos, trophies, and get-well cards from children worldwide. Edison Arantes do Nascimento, 82, is surrounded by his children and grandchildren. He is frail, his magnificent athlete's body now a husk. But his eyes, in moments of clarity, still hold that twinkle. If Tarkovsky sculpted time, our next legend defied it. He was called Pele, a name that requires no translation, no context. From the dirt streets of Bauru, playing with a sock stuffed with newspaper, to the summit of global adoration, his was a myth written in real time. He wasn't just a footballer. He was the beautiful game made flesh. The tears of a 17-year-old after winning the 1958 World Cup, the heartbreaking injury exit in 1962, the triumphant, definitive masterpiece in 1970, that iconic photo of him being carried aloft, arms raised, the gravity-defying goal attempts, the impossible vision, the sheer, childlike joy. He played football as if composing music only he could hear. He spoke of Ginga, the swing, the rhythm, the soul of Brazilian play. He carried the hopes of a developing nation on his shoulders and made them feel like champions. After retirement, he became a global ambassador, his smile a universal currency of goodwill. Back to scene, hospital suite. His body, however, was a ledger of all that joy. Knees ruined, hips replaced, spine in constant pain. Then the colon cancer diagnosis in 2021. The fight was public, brave, and heartbreaking. The world watched the monthly bulletins, the photos of him thumbs-upping from his hospital bed, the slow, inevitable decline. He tries to speak, to comfort his weeping. The words are a faint breath. He squeezes her hand. The gesture contains a lifetime of warmth, of paternal strength. Pele's death on December 29, 2022, was not just the passing of a man. It was the closing of a chapter in global culture. A 3-day national mourning in Brazil. Tributes from every corner of the planet. His coffin processed through the streets of Santos, past Vila Belmiro Stadium, where it all began. The boy who had nothing was buried as a head of state. a secular saint. The camera pulls back from the hospital, over the weeping crowds, over the city, over the coast of Brazil. We see countless kids on countless makeshift pitches, in favelas, in suburbs, in parks across the globe. They juggle, they shoot, they dream. His ghost does not haunt, it inspires. It is in every flick of the ankle, every no-look pass, every celebration of pure, unadulterated skill. He didn't leave the pitch on December 29th. He simply became part of its eternal turf. The king was dead. Long live the game he crowned. In Vivienne Westwood's studio, London, day, December 29th, 2022. The studio is a beautiful chaos. Bolts of tartan, sketches of monumental gowns, next to slogans like Climate Revolution, pins, needles, and well-worn books on art history. Dame Vivienne Westwood, 81, is not here, but her presence is overwhelming. Her husband and collaborator, Andreas Kronthaler, sits quietly amidst her things. On the very same day the world mourned a king, it also lost a queen. A different kind of monarch, one who ruled not with a scepter, but with a safety pin. Vivienne Westwood, a teacher from Derbyshire who, alongside Malcolm McLaren, weaponized fashion and unleashed punk upon an unsuspecting world. 430 Kings Road, 1970s. The shop Sex, later Seditionaries. A cacophony of rubber, leather, and confrontational imagery. The Bromley Contingent, the Sex Pistols, a generation defining itself by what it tore apart. Westwood, not just a seamstress, but a sociologist, piecing together a manifesto from bondage trousers and anarchist slogans. She didn't follow trends, she detonated them. But unlike many rebels, she didn't burn out. She evolved. She discovered the history she'd once rejected, the grand silhouettes of the 18th century, the paintings of Watteau and Hogarth. She merged punk's anarchy with courtly elegance, creating a vocabulary of historical disruption. Andreas picks up one of her iconic orb logo necklaces. The orb, a symbol of sovereign power, clasped in the rings of Saturn. Her life's motto, buy less, choose well, make it last. The punk had become a prophet, using her runway shows not to sell clothes, but to sell ideas. Save the rainforest, arrest the politicians, overthrow capitalism. She died peacefully at home in Clapham, surrounded by family. But there was nothing quiet about her exit from the world stage. Her death was a final stark reminder of a life lived without compromise. From the ripped T-shirts of the 70s to the climate activism of the 2020s, her thread was constant. Question authority, disrupt the narrative, use what you have to say something. We see a montage of people on streets worldwide wearing her designs, her slogans, her attitude. A young activist in a Save the Arctic Westwood T-shirt at a protest. A fashion student meticulously studying a corset from her portrait collection. Vivienne Westwood's ghost is not Spectre. It's a splash of paint, a ripped seam, a shouted slogan in a silent room. She proved that style is not frivolous. It is the skin of your ideology. Her December 29th was her final, magnificent edit. The rebel work was done, but the revolution she helped sow continues to unravel the seams of the ordinary. Number 7. Coda. The weight of a... So, what are we to make of this peculiar constellation? A murdered archbishop, a poet of the interior, a sculptor of time, the king of the beautiful game, the punk monarch. Is December 29th cursed? A vortex of fate? A statistical anomaly given a story? Perhaps the truth is more profound and more simple. The calendar is a net we throw over the chaos of time to make it manageable. And sometimes, by pure chance, that net catches extraordinary souls in its same square. It is not the date that gives them meaning. It is their lives that haunt the date. We see abstract, overlapping images from all their stories, a stained glass saint, a line of poetry written in light, a film frame of rain, a spinning football, a safety pin. They could not be more different. Beckett sought power through God. Rilke sought God through solitude. Tarkovsky sought God through the image. Pelé inspired a secular divinity through the body. Westwood sought to topple all false gods through style. Yet they share a common thread, an unwavering, almost furious commitment to their own truth, a refusal to be other than what they were, even, especially, in the face of their end. December 29th, then, is not a graveyard. It is a monument, a reminder written in the stars of the calendar that greatness, in all its forms, is mortal. But the echo is not. The saint's defiance still whispers in churches. The poet's questions still resonate in quiet hearts. The director's images still slow our rushing minds. The footballer's joy still dances on 1,000 pitches. The rebels' shriek still pierces the fabric of conformity. They are gone, but they are not absent. They live in the spaces they carved out of history, in the voids they left behind that only they could have filled. A modern pilgrim touching the site of Beckett's martyrdom. A person reading Rilke's letters on a subway. A film student analyzing the single take in The Sacrifice. A child in a favela scoring a goal and shouting, Pelé! A young designer tearing and repurposing a garment. So the next time you turn the page to December 29th, don't see it as a day of death. See it as a day of legacy. A day to remember that the final breath is not the final word. The work remains. The beauty endures. The question lingers. The joy persists. The rebellion continues. We are the caretakers of their ghosts. We keep them alive by seeing their visions, by reading their words, by feeling their passion, by continuing their fight. In doing so, we defy the silence. We defeat the calendar. For behind every date, there are stories. And some dates are heavy with